I've always been fascinated by people. I really enjoy talking with them. And through conversation, discover who they are, how they live, and get to know them from the inside out. Thanks to Merc'art, I had the chance to meet more people. Extraordinary humans, also in their less visible side. The artists of Merc'art and many other artists of this existence. The art of is the side A, and especially the side B of the human beings whom I have the privilege of meeting every day in my life. I am Alexandra Quadros.
I don't have technical references. I mean, a lot of my work is literally fixing mistakes and making messes and improvising. I'm always improvising. I'm always picking up new things. I mean, I like going back to watercolors, obviously, but I really enjoy the fact that I did not study art. I really wouldn't change that.
Sometimes a giant blonde appears in your life. And if you're lucky enough, she's a generous soul, a beautiful woman and a talented artist. I heard about Jacqueline de Montaigne when I was choosing the artists for Merc'art's first edition back in 2016. At the time, I wanted only Portuguese artists, but as I was getting to know the ones I wanted, the name Jacqueline de Montaigne was mentioned by several as an artist who I should know and invite. I kept refusing on the basis of her somewhat French name until the day I saw her work, fell in love with it and contacted her. My message was something like, "Hi Jacqueline, a lot of artists have mentioned you, and now that I've seen your work, I love it. But my only problem is, you do not seem Portuguese. Are you?" "Well," she said, "as a matter of fact, yes, I am Portuguese. My mother's side is Anderson de Melo Breiner, so I can't get more local than that." And as it was a Portuguese-Danish family, periodically, a giant blonde pops up in the genetic line. This is how I met Jacqueline de Montaigne. I call her Jay, but this nickname encapsulates an artist, but also the side B that made it, a human being who loves birds and the color blue, a woman that fights for children and women's rights, a mother of 2 lovely boys, and an amazing dog called Pickle. Hi Jacqueline, I cannot call her Jay because she will get mad with me. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy to have you, really. So, you come from a family that is known in Portugal because of the poetry of Sofia de Melo Breiner. And although you were born in Lisbon, as far as I could know, Saudi Arabia, Scotland and East Asia also run in your veins. Can you tell us a bit about your childhood and your upbringing?
I remember my parents were living in Brazil at the time, and my mother's parents were in Portugal. And because my dad was out on an oil rig and my mother was like in the middle of nowhere where the house was, she came to Lisbon to have me.
Oh.
And then we moved to Saudi Arabia. That's where my sister was born, and then Scotland. And then when my parents separated, we moved back to Portugal when I was about 7.
Oh, but I know there are a couple of grandfathers who played an important role in your life or in your artistic choices.
Yeah, my mother's father was an incredible artist. He was a botanical painter.
Okay.
And, I mean, he was a great guy with an insanely wicked sense of humour. And as the first grandchild, I think I was really taken under his wing. And I used to spend hours and hours watching him paint in his studio in Cascais.
So he lived in Portugal as
well.
Yeah.
And I found it all quite addictive, the smell of the paint, his old books, his reference books, his botanical books, the whole old school illustration thing. I was really drawn to that. And my other grandfather was an art producer for the BBC.
Yeah.
I mean, you're eclectic, weird-looking art producer with a big moustache, like horn-rimmed glasses and paisley shirts from the 70s.
Oh.
And we didn't spend so much time with him, but I was very in awe of his achievements over the years. I mean, he wasn't really a hands-on grandfather. He didn't even like being called grandpa because it made him feel old. But just watching him over the years, I remember being in Merc'art and seeing on top of one of the buildings posters of films he'd done, Hamburger Hill. Yeah. You know, he's the art producer for My Left Foot, which won various Oscars.
Wow.
He won various BAFTAs.
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah, he won a bunch of BAFTAs as well. And, sort of looking at his sketches and looking at all the things he did, and we used to have access to all the props. And so both of them had a big influence.
What do you think you picked from each one of them? I mean, the botanical is quite obvious for me, but what do you think that might have shaped you as an artist from each one of them?
I think from my mother's father was definitely this very delicate, detailed, smaller paintings.
Yes.
So, I mean, I went on from sort of botanical things. I used to copy his work. I mean, my grandmother still has things I did as a kid in her bedroom where I would just copy his work. And last year, I asked her if she still had his reference books, and she had it. She gave it to me like for my 38th birthday, 39th birthday. And inside it, there are some sketches I did as a kid.
Beautiful.
Sadly, he died when I was 8. But I mean, I decided that's what I wanted to do. And the other grandfather, he was just really eccentric.
Yes.
And I was really fascinated by it all because as he wasn't so hands-on, he was sort of like this distant, godlike figure.
Yeah.
Even though he's like half my size. But, you know, I was really drawn to that. So... yeah, I mean...
That's amazing, those memories, you know. It's just like if they were the opposites, you know, because one was the eccentric one and the other one was the detailed one, yeah? So you started really early in the art world. Yes, you did your first exhibit when you were 14. You did an apprenticeship with Paula Rego in her studio in London at the age of 19.
No, I was invited to.
You was invited.
That's a long story.
Yeah,
but I've been invited twice, and as a bit of a enfant terrible.
Yeah, tell us about that. I like that.
I think growing up, I was a good student at school, but I was just an artist. I wanted to paint. I didn't really want to study that much. And my parents, I was brought up by my stepfather and my mum. They weren't that approving of my painting style and what I wanted to paint. And they thought, you know, you're a good student, maybe you should do that first. And I just didn't want to. So finally, at some point, they agreed to let me study art, and maybe I should study art. And I'm like, oh, really? Well, I'm not going to do it now that you're saying yes. So, yeah. So I didn't go in the end. But there's a bittersweet thing to it. You know, obviously I would have learnt a lot. I mean, I've met her various times over the years because she was a great friend of my stepfather's. But I know that it would have influenced me. And the fact that I'm self-taught, there's a level of freedom to being self-taught because I don't have technical references. I don't have... I mean, a lot of my work is literally fixing mistakes and making messes and improvising. I'm always improvising. I'm always picking up new things. I mean, I like going back to watercolors, obviously, but I really enjoy the fact that I did not study art. I really wouldn't change that. And had I apprenticed with her, because I've seen some incredible artists that have apprenticed with people like Dali and are very influenced. I mean, the amount of Portuguese painters we have that have technical training, and you're like, my God, they're obviously influenced by Paula Rego. I really don't want to be one of them. Yeah. So, no, I didn't go in the end.
No, you didn't go in the end?
I didn't go in the end.
Oh.
Yeah. I ended up sort of rethinking it. And then I had my oldest son. So that sort of changed things a bit.
Wait. Yeah, no, I know. I don't want to get over there just right now. Okay. So you didn't do the apprenticeship with Paula Rego. You decided not to do it.
No, I've met her many times over the years. I've spent time with her, which is a very privileged experience.
Yeah.
I love her work has influenced me, not so much technically in its aesthetic value, but on its themes.
Yes,
and,
I know.
Her freedom to express really grotesque things.
Yes,
you know, you either love or hate her work, basically.
Yes, or in my case, I love her work, but I would never have one of her paintings. It's just too painful for me.
I love it. I'm very happy to have very heavy stuff around me.
Yeah. For me, it's too tough. I love her fantasy illustrations and paintings, but you know, when it comes to women and abortion, and for me, it's too much. It's too hard. How do you think this contact, now that I know that you didn't do the apprenticeship with her, this contact with her and the thing that you do a first exhibit when you're 14, how do you think this affected, if it did, your teenagehood? Did you consider yourself a different kid? Did you see yourself as a different kid?
I think everyone is convinced they're different and very original. But in my teens, I knew I could paint. But whatever confidence I was given by exhibiting, and I remember selling a piece of work when I was like 9. I had some really horrendous art teachers at school, in one of the schools I went to, that whatever confidence or belief I had in my art, they really beat it out of me.
Oh, God.
So, I thought, you're not really on a timeline when you're a teenager. You think there's time for everything. So I wasn't too worried about it.
Yeah.
Obviously art was very, very significant, but...
it was teenagehood for you.
Oh, God, I was obnoxious. A career really wasn't top of my priority. My poor parents.
Yeah.
God.
I can imagine. Knowing you now, I can imagine. And now that let's make a leap, and all of a sudden you decide to study health sciences, medical ethics, and international policy and pediatric nutrition. I didn't know that. I find out by reading your several bios. And this was after the birth of your youngest son. What happened? What drove you to this?
He was born premature. He had a low birth weight. I'd been diagnosed with a blood disorder a few years previous, which had affected the pregnancy. And I knew that from being diagnosed, I'd always been wanted to do something health related. I did psychology at some point. Yeah. Anyway. But I really struggled to breastfeed him. So, I was constantly complaining, couldn't find support. I thought, this is ridiculous. I'd breastfed my older kid. And his pediatrician said, stop complaining. Why don't you read about it or study? So I started studying. I found an exam I wanted to sit, which is the same level as a nurse. But as I'm not a health professional in Portugal, I need to go back and do sort of general medicine. And in this area, in this field, I did my ethics exam. And I just fell in love with this reading legislation, and I wanted to make a change. I realised Portugal had actually signed an agreement in 1980. And I realised no one really knew about this agreement they had signed, which is to basically provide the public with commercially free information about feeding and nutrition. We don't actually have guidelines in Portugal for any child under the age of 18 on how to feed them. There is no official guideline in the country. So I found an international organisation. I became a member. They invited me to represent Portugal on their international platform. But to do this, as I'm not a health professional or a lawyer at their level, and they're all like my mum's age. I was one of the youngest people in the newest countries to have an official group. It's called IBFAN, the International Baby Food Action Network. So, but to do this, they trained me in Switzerland and London. I did pediatric nutrition, medical ethics, and European policy on how to implement it. So I sort of do that on the sideline as a consultant, also at the Assembleia da República and at our national health system, Direção Geral de Saúde.
And you stopped your artistic life during these years?
I stopped for almost 8 years to do this. I became a full-time student. Yeah. Also to finance your studies and stop working entirely. It's quite a leap to make, but I was very passionate about it. I found a voice. Yeah. I'd never spoken in public in my life. And then all of a sudden I'm doing public talks around Europe, debating in public. United
Nations, right?
And it was incredibly empowering. But at some point, I just got my itch back. Painting was always like a niche for me. It wasn't something I wanted to do. It's something I had to do. Yeah. And I thought, I've done my bit. I proved my point. I can do an academic thing. I'd fulfilled my sort of desire to do something within healthcare. Yeah. And I went back to painting full-time 2008.
Let me just go back for a minute. You mentioned that you mentioned and I read that you are the country representative still for IBFN and for WBTI. What is this WBTI?
WBTI is World Breastfeeding Trends Initiative. So it's an interactive database online. It's created by IBFAN India. Yep. Okay. BPNI. So basically, you can look up. It's not actually just about breastfeeding. It's internationally, you can compare policy implementations within different countries, what's worked, what hasn't worked. It's a colour run classification. Portugal was evaluated in 2015, 15, we need I'm a bit late for our reevaluation, but it's great. So if you're a healthcare provider, you can look up everything from nutrition guides in an emergency to statistics on infant feeding, healthcare, women's rights, legislation that's been implemented, European policy that's in the process of being implemented in legislation. And when we published our report, there was sort of silence for a few years, and there was a bit of a battle when we posted or went public with our classification for Portugal. I think out of 150 points, we've got 93 because there's 15 indicators. Wow. It wasn't too bad, but there's a lot of room for improvement because there's a lot of lack of access to certain statistics. So they became aware of these problems. And last year, I got an official invitation to be a European policy consultant in the development of nutrition guides.
So you're still attached to these organizations, right?
Yeah, that's sort of on the sideline. So we are creating national guidelines, finally, from 0 to 36 months. They haven't been published. Obviously, it takes years and a multidisciplinary group to agree on all the pointers. Wow. But, yeah.
That's beautiful. What do you consider to be your most beautiful whatever the adjective you want to use, achievement in these matters? What have you learned?
I've learned that providing information for someone to make an independent choice is incredibly empowering. A lot of people are worried that I'm like pro breastfeeding. I'm really not bothered if someone breastfeeds or not. I am bothered that they did or didn't have access to information to make an informed choice.
Yeah.
So the fact that, I went back to study this at the age of 30. I'm incredibly shy, actually, for those that know me. And I stood up. I mean, I've given talks in front of 700-800 people on international platforms. Talk about something I'm really passionate about was incredibly empowering. And to have my report, I'd never written a report in my life, acknowledged by the Portuguese government after years of them asking me not to be so verbal. I could say it differently, but I better be careful.
Annoying.
That was incredibly empowering. It really shows that anyone can do anything if they put their mind to it.
Beautiful.
So I think in this whole thing, to be invited and that Portugal is really going to write guidelines based on my report.
That's amazing.
That's
amazing.
Pretty cool.
That's amazing. Did you, at any point of this kind of, let's call it crusade, did you lose hope?
Yeah, loads of times. God, I've been bullied by some really big corporations. We're talking about Nestle, and they're one of the biggest corporations in the world. They are linked to some pretty horrible stuff internationally, and to be belittled and threatened by them. At some point, I actually left my house and I wasn't legally registered in Portugal so that I wouldn't be found. And my family was really worried because they've been linked to some pretty heavy stuff in other countries. But I've cried a million times thinking, my God, what am I doing? I've given up my paid career to be an activist. I've got crappy Portuguese half the time. I'm debating at Parliament. Everyone thinks I'm balmy. Is it worth it? And then, I went back to art. And when I got invited last year, the year before, to do these guidelines, it's like, oh my God, it was really worth it.
Yeah.
Really worth it. And I know that the work has inspired other people that thought they didn't have a voice. So it's good.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with the art of Jacqueline de Montaigne. What did you learn about the human being, and particularly about women?
We're very primitive at the end of the day. It's a very territorial discussion. I think women need to empower each other. It's very personal, motherhood.
Yes.
I remember asking one of my tutors when I was studying, oh my God, why are women so aggressive? And she's like, this is really primitive. It's nature at its best. So when we don't agree with something, they basically think, are you saying I'm a crap mum? We're not. We're just talking about something different.
Yeah.
But to be able to inform women and, provide information for them to make an educated choice in a way they can understand it is it's very rewarding.
Oh yes, that's amazing. I've heard you saying that your career as an artist took off again in 2008, or
around about then. Yeah.
Did the activist become an artivist, or they managed to live together in a balanced way? How do you
going back
put it?
to painting was a bit. It was planned and it wasn't planned. You know, I had contacted a curator, a street art curator, to ask, because we were going to build Portugal was going to build refugee camps in the Algarve, and I'd seen a really good image of a couple of murals done in Haiti on the walls of hospitals after their natural disasters, and it's just images about breastfeeding, super simple. A lot of people, it's images are an international language. We can all speak it. So I thought, let's get bunch of street artists to do very simple educational murals, educating the public through street art on health-related issues. So I contacted her, and a few months later she said, she'd agreed to sort of help me with the project. And a few months later she's like, I'm doing a thing in El Shish Factory. It's 4 women. Would you like to paint a mural? And I'm like, oh, God, how the hell do I do that? It's a bit daunting. But I fell in love with it. So I painted my first mural at 7, and went back into painting. As I said, it's the need. I was really desperate to get back into it. And I thought, I'm old enough, I'm going to paint what the hell I want. Because I did paint a lot in my 20s, from 20 to 30, but not exactly what I'm painting now. It's a bit more commercial.
Yeah. But I'm asking you this about becoming an artivist, or to manage the activists and to balance both sides of you, because in an article that I read about you, the article states the following, and I'm going to quote: "In a society obsessed with aesthetic perfection, superficial happiness, and clear gender identity, Jacqueline consistently deconstructs these stereotypes in her work, striving to provoke her viewer to see genderless beauty and an underlying defiant drama. Birds have also a significant presence in the artist's work, a node to a childhood obsession. Wow. So I see another cause in here.
The fact that I like doing sort of androgynous figures, it's not a political statement at all. But I think in the years I took out, and I found a comfort and ability to filter strong arguments on international platforms. I found out I am an activist by nature. And when I often say I'm outspoken. I don't yell from the rooftops, but if something's wrong, I will research it and I will speak out.
Okay.
And being an artist, I found that, public art's an incredible platform to make a statement.
Absolutely.
So I'm constantly trying to cross the two. At the moment, I've done a campaign that should be out next week with the Câmara de Cascais, and it's using art and activism and educating the public. And I have a lot of projects at the end of the year, hopefully with the Câmara de Lisboa. So I think it's very hard to not cross the two. As an activist by nature and as an artist that is no longer shy to sort of share my vision of what I think my art is, it's inevitable to cross the two.
Yeah, I would like to share with you something that I think it's interesting, which is to see that in the past you had some artists who were not, they were into their own things, as we say in Portuguese, na sua cena, and now you see a lot of artists that really use their art to state something, and I think that's very interesting because it melts the society in a very interesting way, don't you think?
I do. I think I see it slightly differently as someone that is really an activist.
Yes.
I'm not just someone that says I've got an opinion. I can back up my opinions and I can create the argument behind it. I think obviously the more art we have and the more public the image to bring awareness to certain things is wonderful. But there are also a lot of artists that, as you say in Portuguese, apanhar o onda. So they've got in the trend wagon. They're like, well, let's all paint animals because it's sustainability. And I'm like, well, why are you doing it? And they're painting animals that aren't even endangered.
Yes.
I think that it's great to promote nature and all that, but put your money where your mouth is. I think we really need to attach educational articles or get our statistics right when we add them to a painting. It's like, oh, I'm an artivist. And you're like, why? And they're like, well, I'm promoting nature because, we're trying to save the planet. And I'm like, come on, you've got a public platform. Where's your argument? It's super simple, or attach it to an educational piece. But I think that's a professional hazard I have because I am already...
Yeah, but that's your nature.
That's completely my nature.
Yes.
But no, obviously it's super important. You've got incredible artists that are using art as a platform, but they're also connecting to local NGOs and
absolutely, yes.
That's what I mean. If you, one thing is using it to sell your art and get attention, but if you have a platform attached to something, indirectly do end up getting more attention to your art, but use it for good and really. Yeah, put your money where your mouth is.
Yes, make the change, as Gandhi said. Now let's go into your creating process. When you create a piece, in the process of creating a piece, what do you love the most? What is the part of the process that you love the most? Because I think most of the people like to know this.
I like the beginning and the end. I struggle in the middle. I'm like, shit, why did I take this on? I like the beginning. I like creating the piece in my head and the whole inspiration process. I'm very systematic. It's almost like building a puzzle. Yeah. And I love the end, where I'm getting close to the end and I've got like days left. I really enjoy it. I'm like bouncing around my studio, dancing, super happy because I know I can see the end. So those two parts. In the middle, I tend to get quite tired. I mean, it depends what the piece is, obviously.
Yes.
But I love the beginning and the end.
Do you? I think you are, but do you consider yourself to be obsessive?
No, not at all.
Not at all.
I mean, I'm incredibly a bit neurotic. Everything I have is very tidy and in its place. But I'm not obsessive with my art, funny enough, and I'm not a perfectionist at all.
Oh, that's funny.
I'm very good at improvising. I mean, when I start a painting, it rarely finishes how I planned it to finish.
Wow.
And I've evolved throughout the painting. I mean, if I do something with a lot of birds, the first bird's like, okay. Halfway through, I'm like, oh, they're getting better. At the end, I'm like, yeah, nailed it.
Good.
But I'm not at all obsessive with my work.
That's funny. I
really wing it. No. Everyone's like, I really wing it.
That's a balance. That's really a balance. And how do you hate the most in the process, if any?
The middle where I'm like, is it working? Could it be better? And I'm a bit tired. I mean, I work a bit stupid hours. I mean, I really take on maybe too much work than I should. I really struggle at that point. I think, oh God, it's shit. I'm going to have to start from the beginning, or it's not where I want it to be, and then all of a sudden it changes, and I'm like, oh, I can see the light, and then yes, we're there.
Let me ask you another question. We live in a very polarized world in these days with the. I don't want to say names, but with all these crazy guys running big countries, dangerous guys, how do you see the state of the art these days? What do you foresee? How do you see it?
Politically?
No,
art?
I mean, no. I don't mean politically. I mean in the sense of the opportunities, the. Because I have my own opinion, but I want you to state yours.
It depends on the country. I mean, I realize things have. I mean, for example, I had a lot of opportunities in my teens. In Portugal, there were awards, there were competitions. I had some very good, very, very good patrons that took my work to other countries. And then I look at my oldest son, who, I mean, he sold out twice. He's a really talented photographer. And I look at all these competitions and opportunities. They're for over 18s. He's been doing this since he was 12, 13. Yeah. And there are some really good artists, like students, younger ones. And I do think the market is slightly monopolized by a few galleries and a few curators here, which I find really frustrating.
Yeah.
It's always the same guys. I'm like, oh my God, there's so many incredibly talented artists here. Sometimes I look at festivals, I don't even open it. I'm like, shit, it's the same bloody group. I should be careful. It's right. So I find that Portugal's quite small, is really monopolized here. And then, I'm doing a lot of stuff. In the next 18 months, I'm not really doing anything in Portugal. It's all abroad. And, the world's your oyster.
Yeah.
They're objectively looking at your work, not who you know, who you're connected to.
Yeah.
They don't really give a shit if you've got a degree or master's in art either. They will look at your work.
Yeah, I agree with you. But my question was in another direction, which is these days the world has become. We're always using this word global. Okay, we're global because suddenly we can contact with each other much easier. We've got the internet and we can talk with a curator in a matter of hours. So it's quite easy. But at the same time, you have these big countries that are being run by crazy, very conservative things, like if you're going backwards in time. And I was asking you this question about the state of the art globally, because last week I had a very interesting conversation with a Brazilian PR that was living in Portugal, and she went back to Brazil now.
Oh, of course, you've got all the censorship. Well, they're trying to pass censorship laws.
And yeah, but she says the country is exploding in terms of art, which is...
Yeah, but they can't show it. It's completely restricted.
Yeah,
I mean, my sister's in Sao Paulo at the moment, and she's like, you should come here. And I'm like, I don't know if it's a place I want to explore at the moment.
Yeah. But don't you think this will bring an explosion, a burst of... because people always find a way, and art always find a way. It's like water, water finds a way to get out.
I think, of course, everyone's going to find a way to get their artwork out. I don't think all of a sudden we're going to have a bunch of new artivists on the scene and new artists. I just think they're going to find different ways to reach public platforms.
And to communicate, to state.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, where will we find your works in 2020? Where will you be?
Next stop's London.
Hopefully, I hope I will join you.
No, this art fair is just for artists.
I know. But
on other fairs.
Yeah.
Next stop's London in Roy's Art Fair in Oxo Tower. That'll be a week. I haven't started painting for it yet. I keep looking at the other artists that are already posting their work. I'm like, oh my God, I can only start in like 3 weeks before the fair. Madrid as well. I can't really say exactly where, but I'll have an entire new body of work in a
fantastic,
very, very nice contemporary art gallery, and possibly China. But that's still in... we'll see how things go.
As we say in Portuguese, in the secret of gods.
Nothing here.
Nothing here. Still, yet.
Nothing in Portugal yet.
You're a mother of 2 boys, just as I am. And as a closing question, I would like to ask you a question my elder son posed me 1 year ago, which I find very interesting. As a mother, what is the thing you would be sorry not to have taught your children? I love this question. My elder son, for those who are listening to us, has the same name as Jacqueline's.
Tom and Tom. Two Tomages.
And he posed me this question one day at dinner time. He said, what would be the thing you would regret not being able to have taught us?
I see the other... I'm really adamant on what I teach them, principle-wise.
Adamant is a beautiful word.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say what I'm worried I wouldn't have taught them, because I really focus on the things I believe in. I really want them to be individuals. I don't want them to give a shit about what other people think. Stand up for what they believe in. Yeah. Never be afraid to speak their mind. Get their facts right before they do it, though. If you've gotten it, otherwise it's just an opinion. Opinion's a luxury. Always get your facts.
Yeah.
But I want them to be individuals.
Yeah. Do you know what I said? I said curiosity. If I don't manage to pass to you the beautiful thing about being curious about everything, I did a lousy job.
I think the two boys are incredibly different. They've got
Mine too.
I mean, they've got the same principles, but their personalities are so different. It would be hard to say something like that. But I really want them to be completely confident in who they are. Never be something else for anyone else. There's absolutely nothing they can't achieve.
Absolutely. I think so too. So I said this was the closing question, but it wasn't.
Got another one.
Yeah. I can't resist to ask you this one. What would would you like to do that you haven't done yet?
Curate. Absolutely. And I will.
Oh, I assure you.
I would like. I mean, I've already got a lineup of who I'd invite, but I definitely want to curate. Not necessarily here, but I would like to try something here. Open the market a bit. Make it a little
let me tell
more
you
accessible. Yeah, I can't do it right now, but in the next few years, I'd like to definitely do curating and for exhibitions, not street art or anything like that, but for shows.
Okay.
And give opportunities to some incredible younger artists that just don't know how to make that connection. Yeah.
You will. You will.
Hopefully.
Thank you so much, Jane.
Thank you.
Jacqueline de Montaigne is one of the artists in Merc'art Lisbon's portfolio. Her works and bio are available at www.merc'art.pt. Merc'art is a project that intends to democratize art. It brings together artists from different areas and offers the possibility to buy originals and fine art prints. Find all about us at www.merc'art.pt. The Art of Jacqueline de Montaigne is a Merc'art production.
This podcast was recorded and edited in Display Sound Lab Studios, Lisbon.